Hi, I'm Bryan with Pioneer Builders. Today, we're going to talk about garage doors. Let's get into some of the specifications for that. For this video, we're going to talk more about the building science and the materials behind the doors, more so than the architecture or the aesthetics. There's a variety of different looks you can go for, from a carriage style. Our doors are pretty basic, but again, we're going to talk more about the performance of the doors, something we might not think about so much, but if we're interested in building science, it's nice to know what all of the different options are and how different decisions can impact what you actually select for the door. One of the key things, of course, is money, and the more money you put in a door, the more of these features or characteristics you might get. On the other hand, the money itself might be because of the architecture. There's just so many different dials to turn when it comes to decisions for home building. And it can't always be about money. It can't always be about architecture, at least not for most of us. Sometimes we just have to look at all of the parameters, the variables, and come to a good decision. But I feel part of my job here on the Build Show is to distill a lot of these different bits of information into just some short videos for you to go, oh, I never really thought about that. Didn't think about looking at it from that perspective. So one of the things, this isn't door related, but I did want to make sure to mention it. You saw me just pull down this door. It's because motors cost money. So we pre-wire when we do a new build 4 motors at each one of our garage doors, but we typically only install 1 motor. Homeowners, they just don't have a problem with that. They hire somebody or they install one themselves. Maybe they have a buddy do it. You might go, well, that's only a couple $100. Remember the accounting adage. If you take care of the pennies and nickels, the dollars take care of themselves. I do cost accounting. I have to make those decisions. Okay, let's get into the building science part. In a previous video, I talked about the thermotracks, which really helps to protect against convective currents entering or leaving the garage, as the case might be. In this video, we want to talk about some different things that can impact the heat inside or outside of a garage door. And that's going to involve radiation, and it's going to involve conduction. Now, when the sun hits an object, it can either absorb that heat and emit it, or it can warm itself up and through conduction start heating up an area or another object. In this case, garage doors can do both. We tend to do steel garage doors, and those do not, they're not a good emitter, but they are a good conductor. So either way, you're going to be penalized there. If the sun comes and hits your steel garage door, you might be able to put your hand next to it and not feel much radiation, radiant heat coming off of it. But if you touch it, you might be able to feel that conductive energy going into your body. So steel is good because it's strong. Now we're thinking about the conductive currents from the outside blowing. You might have a 16-foot wide panel that's going to be receiving those pressures from that fluid, depending on where you're at and how strong the air is. You need it to be strong enough to withstand that convective force. So that's where the steel's good. But the steel's not so good when it comes to thermal control. So one thing to look for when you're specifying garage doors is, do you want your garage to be warmer or colder, depending on, what your perspective is there? And do you want to put insulation in to achieve that separation? It's standard for us to order our garage doors fully insulated. So you've got the steel for strength, you've got the insulation. Well, now you've got another decision to make. Would it be vinyl backed or would it be steel? The steel is going to make it stronger, and there's different things that they do with the construction of the door itself just to make it stronger. Or would you want to be a little more middle of the road, keep it with steel, insulation, and do vinyl back? So those are just some things to think about when it comes to specifying your garage doors. Or is this just an outbuilding and you only want it to protect your valuables? You might not care about the insulation, and that's totally fine. Maybe you want to save the money on that. Later on in this video, I'm going to go show you another garage door, But let's lower this door, and I'm going to talk about some of these specifications more closely. All right, full disclosure, I am looking at their specifications here, make sure I use the right terminology, and honestly, help my memory a little bit here. So one of the things we already talked about was the steel that they have. This joint here is actually tongue and groove, so that helps to keep the weather out instead of it just being like a butt joint, which wouldn't be too terribly efficient. There's a lot of different types of insulation out there. In this case, it's got polystyrene insulation. So if you ever use an old coffee cup that you get from a gas station or a convenience store, that's polystyrene. So behind this piece of steel and behind the front piece of steel is that insulation. There's a couple of other things that it talks about. One thing that I can't see is full-length reinforcing plates to solidly attach hinges and struts. So I wish I could see it, but it's got to be back here is what they're talking about, and we'll just have to take their word for it. Let's go down to another house, because the nice thing about what happened here is we got these upgraded garage doors accidentally. Garage door company, somehow an error crept into the sequence, and we got these upgraded ones, and rather than them break their schedule or have to deal with it, they just let it ride. So I'm able to talk about this one, but in a house down the street that we built, it has a lower graded garage door, and let's see if we can look at some of the differences. Okay, we're down the street at another house that we built. This time we did not use Thermotrax, which is kind of nice for comparison purposes that you can see what I'm talking about. So here you just have that straight rail, and these wheels don't naturally want to push forward as this garage door drops all the way down. When you sight down the side, you'll be able to see how much daylight there is. Let me interrupt myself real quick. You'll notice that we do have one panel with a lot of glazing. This is going to allow things to get real hot inside a garage. So that just kind of speaks to the building science side. This is vinyl backed, and you hopefully now can begin to see some of the differences with the design. Remember the other one was steel backed? And now you can see this meeting rail here, and it is so much hotter in here. There's just more thermal conductivity that can come in. I did another video you might want to see on Thermotrax. That one allowed the conductive heat to come in, and I don't know how much I can feel the radiant heat, but I swear I can feel it. And it's in the low 80s in here, and if it was hotter, it would get even hotter in here. One other little thing I'll direct your attention to, we do have a little bug in here. That's something that I talked about on the Thermotrax video, is trying to keep bugs out of your garage. It can just get pretty nasty. In the garage here, I wish I had one of these at the other house, but you're just gonna have to trust me. In here, it's 83 degrees Fahrenheit at 36% RH. Remember, the hotter it is, the more moisture can be held in the air. So now it just went up to 37, but maybe I'm just sweating a little bit. Anyway, it is considerably less comfortable in here than it is down the street. On the other hand, I've got a heat pump water heater in here, so there is more thermal energy that I can transfer into that water heat. It does air condition naturally. It'll condense the water in here and put that out and keep the relative humidity down. So again, there's just a lot of different factors that you have to think about, but it is way less comfortable in here. Take my word for it. Well, who would have thought there was so much that we could talk about with garage doors? And we could talk about even more. We could get into the motors, belt drive, chain drive, that's the other term. Anyway, but just for today, we talked about the paneling and some of the building science connections that are in there. Can this actually make a difference? Well, let me tell you, there's a friend of mine who grew up down in Las Vegas, and when he found out, in that case it was about the Thermotrax, he was like, that's what my parents needed their house. He's gonna end up showing the video to them on that. Pretty simple upgrade there. If you were gonna replace your garage doors, you might want to wait a little bit or just price it out. Again, you can go without any insulation, to each his own, or you can go with insulation with a vinyl back, or you can go with the steel. And as you saw the difference, hopefully you could tell that one really is more solid than the other. Let me tell you one other thing that I did one time, then we'll actually wrap it up. One time we got one of our garage doors installed and it had no insulation at all. So where this was, it was basically just a voided cavity. And I actually got a kit and I cut up the polyiso and installed it in the door and gave the homeowners that ended up buying the house an insulated garage door. So there is a way to retrofit it too, if that's something you're interested in. Don't you love building as much as I do? Everything has technical aspects. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Give me a follow over on Instagram. I'm at Pioneer Builders Inc. We'll see you next time on The Build Show.